Got here. Well, welcome, nature enthusiasts. Thanks for taking the time out of your Sunday to hang out with us and talk about one of our favorite things to talk about, and that's bugs. So, my name is Dr. Jenny Paul. I have a PhD in freshwater science from Southern Illinois University. I've been working with bugs for the last 15 years. I've been working in streams all over the planet. I've worked in some of the dirtiest streams and rivers, some that received some like major mine tailing pollution, and then I've also worked in some streams that are the few remaining truly pristine waterways left on the planet. A water clean enough you can actually drink from it. I got my master's in freshwater ecology also from the University of North Texas, and I'm currently in Southeast Tennessee as an instructor here at Cleveland State Community College, and also as a mentor and researcher through the Greg A. Vital Center for Natural Resources and Conservation. And with me in-house, I have Taylor Hill. She is I can't see my computer. Are you on screen? she's like, get me off, get me off. She's a student here at Cleveland State in the wildlife program, and she's doing an intensive semester. We're taking her deep in freshwater ecology. So she'll be here helping field questions and whatnot. And then co-teaching with me, I have my best friend, little sister, Gina Goldcool, hailing from North Carolina. Gina, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, my name is Regina. I have my educational background also from the Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, and I got my bachelor's degree in forest watershed management and hydrology. Fun fact is that Jenny and I started our programs at the exact same time, albeit like 2 degrees apart. So she started her PhD program, we got to know each other, and she like pretty much turned me on to like aquatic insects. And now, after I graduated, I moved to Western North Carolina, where I live in Hendersonville, just south of Asheville, and I work for a nonprofit organization called Mountain True as their water quality administrator. And essentially, I coordinate our citizen science programs that have to do with monitoring all the local rivers and streams in our county. So we do that by chemical analysis, but also through biological analysis and monitoring, in which we collect bugs to assess water quality. Um, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I really like it
This is
here.
really fun. We're kind of coming at, Gina and I come at this from opposite spectrums because I have a lot of formal training through different, lab experiences through graduate school, and so a lot of the language that I use is very technical. Sometimes a lot of Latin, and then Gina's coming from it as this more grassroots, like holistic approach that she's learned all of these bug things. So I brought her on because it'll be a lot of fun, but also she'll help rein me in and help me. It'll be a lot of fun because we kind of meet in the middle, and she has a lot of experience working with um, people out in the community, training them about bugs and how to ID them. So again, we just want to thank you for coming and spending your Sunday here with us. And also, this is a fundraiser for the National Park Service. So with the shutdown, the National Parks lost $400,000 a day, over $12 million in the month that they were shut down, on top of a lot of poor players that went in when things were unsupervised and did a lot of damage. And so this was just an opportunity for us to do what we love to do, and that's talk about bugs, but also raise some money for the national parks that are so important. So if you haven't already, you can still donate to the National Parks Foundation. They've got a fund where they're still accepting donations for that. So that's our plug. Did my camera go off? Our cameras are off?
I had to turn mine back on.
Okay.
Can y'all see us?
Let's see if I can turn my camera back on. Okay, there we go. We crashed the internet. All right. So, hey, Gina, I got a really easy but really hard question for you. You
What's that?
ready?
Yeah.
What is a creek, Gina?
Are you sure that's like a hard question? Is this a trick
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, what's a creek, Gina?
Okay, a creek is a moving body of water. Essentially, it is, I guess the best analogy I would have is that it is like the veins and arteries of our natural world. So it moves
Oh, they
fresh
can't hear
water
us.
from one place to
Oh, they
another.
can't see me? Okay. Oh, can you see me? Oh, start sharing.
Yeah.
There we go. Thanks, y'all. All right, all right. That's a good answer. Let me ask you this then. Is that a creek?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's moving water. Is it a
Kinda, kinda. So this is a picture that I took when I was home in Dallas. Oh, that's a picture I took when I was home in Dallas over the summer. And where I grew up in north central Texas, this is a creek. This very much is a creek. And so in prairie systems, there are times out of the year where the water dries up. We call those intermittent streams where uh, it recedes back to little pool areas. And around the city, this is very much a creek. You could go walk that concrete slab there for a while, and it'll open up into little pools in different areas where you'll find lots of cool critters. So what about this? Um, this where I was working in Panama. Would you consider that a creek?
Yeah, definitely.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
You
100%.
can tell I'm trying to trick you up here. So it's actually a river. So there's the Rio Maria in Panama. So I was there a couple of years ago um, working, and because of the hydrology and the culture and whatnot, that this is in Panama what they consider a mountain river. I got one more for you. Is this a creek?
Have to say yes.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
down.
right. It's Sycamore Creek. You're not sure. You're not sure anymore. So this is Sycamore Creek here in Northeast Tennessee, and this very much is a creek. So are you picking up where I'm going with this yet?
Boom.
So so what I'm trying to say is that words like creek, brook, stream, they don't really mean a lot because it's built into the culture. So what might be a creek to me may be a river to somebody else.
Hmm.
So, so one of the ways that we classify streams is based on stream order. And so if you can walk up a river and keep walking all the forks, when you reach the very end, you're at a headwater stream. And so typically, as you go from the headwaters down to larger and larger streams, as all those forks are meeting, you transition from a creek to what other people would consider a river. But ultimately, I'm going to show you a lot of different habitats and different bugs. And some you may find in some habitats in some parts of the country more than others. And that's just because creeks are very variable. And so it doesn't really matter if you go to like a little creek around your backyard, if you go out into the national forest, into larger mountain systems, you're going to find bugs everywhere. So just keep in mind as you're traveling around and you go to different parts of the country or different parts of the world, start to look at the creeks, and you'll notice like a real good way to do this just when you're driving. You're constantly driving over creeks and streams with those bridge crossings, and you'll start to notice that they physically look different from each other. You'll start to notice that creeks out west look very different from creeks in the Midwest and then where we are here, in the foothills of the Smokies. And you'll find different bugs in different places. So we are going to take you on a virtual creeking expedition, and we're going to explore some of the different critters that you'll find along the way. And so just keep in mind that to see the highest variety of different organisms, you need to look in a bunch of different places. So there are many different habitats within a creek. So there's bugs that live right on the surface of the water, and there's bugs that live down in the water. There's bugs that live on the rocks on the bottom of the stream. There's bugs that burrow down deep into the substrate. And so depending on where you're looking, you're going to see different critters there. And so to see the most variety, when you go to a creek, you need to explore different places. And also don't be afraid whenever you're out traveling to take a minute and go check out a creek in a different part of the country you've never been to, and you're bound to find different bugs there. So before we go, though, we have to have a group meeting. So we're going to take you on this virtual creeking adventure. But bugs are very old. They've been around for millions and millions and millions of years, even before the dinosaurs. And so in that time, they've gotten really good at hiding. So before we all go tromping onto the creek, we got to stay very quiet, talk softly and walk softly, because there are some bugs that I want to introduce you to that I don't want us to scare away. So we're going to get into the creek, but before we do, there's some really, really interesting critters that live right on the edge of the water. And so before you even reach the stream, take a minute to stop and look at the banks of the river. Scan the banks. Do you see anybody hiding in the crevices in the rocks there? You might see a cool salamander staring back at you. It's a good idea to, just take a minute and look at any foliage that's hanging over the creek, and you're bound to see cool fishing spiders and different things before you even hit the water. And so one of my favorite bugs, they're semi-aquatic. So it means that they're not fully submerged in the water, but they really like this nice riparian habitat. And those are toad bugs. You ever heard of toad bugs, Gina?
Actually, I haven't. I mostly deal with like total aquatic bugs, so that like interface between land and water is like even more diverse than like straight aquatic bugs. So I have literally never heard of this bug before you showed me this PowerPoint.
I bet you've seen them before. I bet you've seen them before, and you probably, out of the corner of your eye, you thought they were little tiny baby frogs, because
They
they
do look a
look
lot like
like
frogs.
little baby toads, and they're small, like about the size of a thumbnail, and they really like moist, sandy environment. So you're not going to find them in a habitat like I pictured here. This is in southeast Tennessee, so they wouldn't be scrambling up on these rocks, but you're going to find them maybe further down on a sandbar when the creek opens up. They're all over southern Illinois, where Gina and I just moved from. And so these little critters, they're super cute. They're true bugs. So that means that they're in the order Hemipteran, and all true bugs share one feature. Do you know what that is, Gina? Did you know there's a quiz, Gina? I put this whole seminar together
Six
just to
legs.
quiz you. Oh, they have 6 legs. Check. What else?
Yeah.
What's one thing that defines true bugs?
Exoskeleton.
They have
6 legs.
piercing
Head,
mouth
thorax,
parts.
abdomen.
So if I were to flip this little guy over, and I've got some pictures of some other true bugs further down that we can look at. But if I were to flip him over and look at his mouth, you would see that he's got a very sharp beak, like a little straw. And so what these bugs do is they skitter around on the sand catching flies and other smaller insects, and they grab onto them, and then they stab their mouth into the bug, and they inject proteolytic enzymes, liquefying the inside of their prey, and then they suck it out through a straw. So they may look like cute, timid little toady bugs, but don't let that cute exterior fool you. They are fierce predators, hunting down flies as they. So
There are a lot of
that's a
bugs.
new one. Oh, you could go deep. Bugs are better than Pokemon. You just I mean, you're just, there's so diverse. I mean, the more you, this is a really deep rabbit hole we're going into here. Do you have any questions, Taylor? I saw you looking. All right, all right. All right, what do we have next on the tour? Oh, one of my favorites, mole crickets. They are what they sound like. Part cricket, part mole. So they are in the same order as crickets and grasshoppers, but they have these modified forelegs that are really good for digging. And so you will find these more inland. I know there's scourge on green grasses and golf courses, but they are also semi-aquatic. So I find these guys sometimes uh, when I'm trying to take a sediment sample or find and just hanging out by the creek. Sometimes you'll see them coming up to the surface, but if you keep your eyes open, sometimes you'll see evidence of like little holes where they've dug a little burrow, and sometimes you can, if you just wait, sometimes you'll see them. They really like to come out at night, so they build these intricate. Um, um, they dig into ground and they build these intricate burrows where they raise their babies, and then at night they come out and they feed on plants and different things that they scavenge upon. But they're really fun too because if you hold them, sometimes they make little stridulation noises. So you can hear them um, as you're torturing them, I guess, as you're holding bugs. That's what we
If
do.
I could,
But they're so cute. They're just like a really fun one, and I usually come upon them when I've been out a little too long. And it's starting to get dark, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta hike out of this creek. And then sometimes I get stuck because then I can find some mole crickets, and then I'm there super dark.
I've heard of
Have you
people
ever
finding
heard of
them in
mole
their
crickets?
basements too, which is kind of interesting.
Well, no, you're thinking of camel crickets.
Well, both. There was a like
Oh,
a
there's mole
Facebook
crickets in
forum
basements
where
too.
it's like this nationwide what is this bug sort of thing, or people share cool photos
Yes.
of bugs, or they post a photo of something they found and like open it up to the forum and the rest of the community to identify. And I've seen this is like I've never really seen the mole crickets necessarily like in my own field work or like when I'm outside. But I saw some posted to the forum on Facebook, and I was like, it looks like a mole and a cricket, but it also to me looks like a crawdad face, especially with the antenna and like the big like like what is
Oh,
it, sclerized plate on the back of its head.
I
Um,
love
and it
speak
just looked
Latin
like the
genuinely.
strangest thing, and someone found it like oddly enough, like crawling around. I think it maybe have gotten um, those the those windows that are kind of underground or like at ground level that sometimes have a covering. I know when I was younger, it would like get really moist in there and really muddy, and I think one maybe had gotten in there and into their basement, and they were like, "What is this thing? Does it
I
bite?"
love it. I've never been lucky enough to find a mole cricket in a basement. Maybe one day. All right, what else
Maybe
we
one
got?
day.
Ooh, I kind of buried the lead. Y'all saw it. Fishing spiders. So fishing spiders are super, super cool. We can't leave them out. So they resemble wolf spiders, and they're built similarly, and they don't build webs. So they are active hunters like wolf spiders, and they can get quite large, like as big as my hand. And so this is another really cool bug. If you just keep your eyes out, whenever you're by the creek, I've seen them a lot of times. Creek accesses are bridge crossings, and so sometimes just those concrete sides of the bridge, you'll see them uh, just like plastered against the side, spread out, or they might be hanging out on some rocks. But these are super cool spiders because they will fish. So they can anchor their back legs on something stable like a piece of wood or a plant over the water, and they'll hang out and they spread their body weight across the surface. They have these hydrophobic hairs, or these hairs that repel water on the edges of their legs, as you can kind of see them spread out on the surface of the water, and they'll hang out there and then grab anything that comes too close to the surface. And these spiders can get quite big, and so they have been known, like this picture here, they have been known to take fish and vertebrates. So
Like a minnow.
we don't typically think,
Pretty big fish for a
yeah,
spider.
like we don't
I
really
have a
think of vertebrates as being prey to bugs, but it happens a lot. What was your question,
Well, I'm
Gina?
referring to Daryl's question, like how do they catch the fish if they don't spin webs, and do they like poison fish, or not poison, but do they have venom um, that they inject into fish, or they just use the fangs to straight up stab
Sure.
into their heads?
Well, so they don't make webs, like I said, and so I wish I had a better picture. You could kind of see these large fangs. They look almost like a tarantula, and so they can use them. And then their first set of, they look almost like feet, but they're actually modified mouth parts that they can use to help grab onto their prey. And so if a minnow comes too close to the surface, they can latch onto it with their fangs. And I'm not an expert in spider venom. I know that they do produce some sort of toxin. I'm not sure if it immobilizes the prey, but I'm sure it also aids in like dissolving the tissues so they can be sucked back up by
Yeah,
the fangs.
they don't have
Not
like
not fun to get.
chew,
Yeah,
right? So
they don't
everything has
have.
to be like sucked up as a liquid.
Yes. And they don't have like a praying mantis's arms are really good to just, if you've ever seen a praying, if you've ever watched a mantis eat, they grab on to their prey, and then they've got these vice-like arms that just hang on, um, so that prey can't go anywhere. And so I assume with the spiders they probably utilize some sort of venom to also immobilize their prey. But these are just really cool bugs to keep an eye out before you even get to the creek. You'll be amazed at all the little critters that hang out just in that inner riparian area. All right, do you have any questions so far? Nothing? All right. Moving on. So we're going to get a little bit closer to the water, but I don't want to get into it quite yet. I want to talk about some really cool bugs that live just on the water surface. And so you're probably familiar with some of these bugs. And what I've shown you right here, this would not be really good habitat to find bugs living on the water. Do you know why, Gina?
Because it's too fast.
It, it's
The water is
too
moving too
fast.
quickly.
It's flowing really fast, and all that turbulence is creating all those bubbles that really disrupts the water surface and all the surface tension. So if I was looking for some of these bugs, the best place to go would be to walk upstream to the next pool that you can see down in my picture. We'll probably see some of these bugs. So you've
They're like little
all seen these
micro-eddies.
guys, I'm sure, water striders. I love these guys. Water striders, water skaters, and so these guys capitalize on uh, the amazing ability that water has to stick to itself. So I'm sure you're all aware you could jump into the water and everything's fine, but if you jump high enough, that water turns to concrete pretty fast. And so that's because water, it has, it's very cohesive. It sticks to itself, creating high surface tension that these water striders use to float across the surface. So they have modified legs that spread out into these skates that are aligned with those hydrophobic hairs similar to the spider that I showed you earlier. And they have claws just like all insects have claws, but their claws aren't on their feet. Their claws are moved up into their elbow. So it doesn't break the surface tension of the water. And so they skate around on the surface, and they're also true bugs just like our toad bug. So they're true bugs. What type of mouth parts do they have, Gina?
Like the pointy snouts. What are they called?
A pointy snout, okay. Piercing, sucking mouth parts. So what do you think they eat?
They eat smaller bugs.
Yes, right? So they skate around the surface and they've got these cute little feet that they hang up. And here you can really see that mouth part curved up under. It's a very, very sharp beak-like mouth. And they have these two little forelimbs that they carry up under them so they can grab any bugs that venture too close to the surface. And then they use that beak to stab through the exoskeleton of their prey and suck up the contents. It's a vicious world out there to be a bug. It's a bug eat bug world. You can't see the pain on my students' face with these cheesy jokes, but that's why I do it. All right, one more. What else we got here? What about these guys? Whirligig beetles. I'm sure you've seen these floating around the top of the water. These are beetles, and they tend to cluster in groups. And again, you'll find these in the slower backwater area, and they're really fun to watch because they just kind of spin around on the top of the water, floating along. And the coolest feature of these bugs, I think, is their eyes. Do you know anything about whirligig beetle eyes,
I
Gina?
know that they're split horizontally so that they have the full range that they can see above the surface and below at the same time.
Gina, you get an A. Gina, you get an A. So these bugs are super cool. So they have this amazing modification where their eyes are split into the top and the bottom. They're actually four eyes. So they've got one set on the top that can see any predators that might be coming in from above, and then they've also got a set of eyes that are underneath the water that are able to look for prey and also any other predators that might be coming at them from the bottom. So these guys are well suited for life on the surface. Their babies also live in the water. Their babies live down below the surface, and both of these beetles, either in the larval baby form or as adults are on the surface, fierce predators. So they've got those large mandibles like all beetles do, and they're really good hunters, especially the babies. All right. How are y'all doing? Do y'all have any questions for us so far? Gina, I can't see the question box, so you'll have to let me know if anyone's got anything.
I think we're all set.
All right, all right. So I guess it's a good time to do what you've all been here, what you all came to see, and that's the bugs in the water. So we're at a pool already. So we're in that slower backwater area where the creek has deepened out, the water has slowed down, and so this is where we're finding all those bugs on the surface. But this is where there's some really cool critters that live down in the pool. So again, this is those deeper, slower moving pools. We would be failing you if we didn't take a good amount of time to talk about dragonflies and damselflies. I've been doing outreach, I don't know, 15, 16 years with bugs, and it amazes me how many people don't realize dragonflies live in the water. Do you encounter that ever, Gina?
Yeah, I have literally a specimen that I collected, or actually a kid collected in a creek while I was doing this educational thing. And I have never seen him so freaked out before when he found this crawling around in the kick net.
Yeah.
It fell out. But it's a
We were
dragonfly
all
larva. So like for scale, here's my hand. It's not that big, but it's pretty big. And he was like freaking out about what it was. He was like, it's a spider. It's a I don't know, like a scorpion sort of thing. And I was like, no, it's a dragonfly. And he wouldn't believe me. He was like, you're lying. I don't believe you. It's not a dragonfly. It looks nothing like a dragonfly. I see dragonflies. And I was like, yeah, but what did it look like before it was a fly? Like, well, it's always been a fly. So his mind was pretty blown when he found out that dragonflies look completely different when they're in their larval stages, which is really cool.
That's a really good point because they do look completely different as babies than they do as adults. And as adults, they're so they're such a big, beautiful insect, and they're very charismatic, flying around, ponds and creeks, and they're just really capture your attention, and they're really easy to fall in love with. And I think some people are shocked when they see that this is what the babies look like. And so, uh, dragonflies are the larger, burlier looking bugs, and then the damselflies are the more dainty form, but they're all in the same order, Odonata. And Odonata literally means winged tooth. And they definitely have they've earned that title. What I have pictured here in my hand, this is from some creeks I was working on in Illinois, and on the top left is a baby damselfly, and the bottom right is a baby dragonfly. And so both of them have some similar characteristics, which we'll talk about, but just to keep them straight, the damselflies are always these daintier um, they've got longer body forms, and the dragonflies are these like beefier, burlier. I think they look kind of like crabs or like crab spiders. So let's talk about dragonflies first. Dragonflies are from the stuff of nightmares. Uh, I'm pretty sure whoever designed the alien from the Aliens movie series, he fashioned this after dragonflies. And so they have these just incredible mouth parts that kind of they extend out and have these grabbers on them that they can shoot out and grab prey. And if you ever grab one, if you find one of these in the wild and you're very, very gentle, you can grab their bottom jaw and lift it out, and you can actually see their these processes and the arms attached to it. So it's actually quite incredible. They are ambush predators. Many of them are ambush predators, and so you're going to find these very well camouflaged in maybe some aquatic plants that might be growing in the shallows, or you might see them hanging out on a rock or on top of some leaf litter, just spread out, waiting for some unlucky animal or bug to come swimming by, and then they reach out with their hands and they grab it, and then they bring it in and they devour. And as you can see in this picture that I have on the bottom right, they will cannibalize other dragonfly, anything small enough for them to grab onto, they will consume, and I literally mean anything. So another this is another bug that will readily consume vertebrates. I won't show you some of the traumatizing pictures I found of them eating frogs and tadpoles and a whole slew of anything that they can grab onto, they're going to consume. And so I think that it's and they carry that with them all the way to adulthood, where they will top predator of a small ecosystem. So these dragonflies, some of them, they can get huge as babies, and you'll see, maybe if I have it on one of these pictures, they carry their wings in a little backpack on their back, and when they're ready, when the time is right, they will crawl out of the water, and they will split in crawl out of their larval exoskeleton and they will pump up their dragonfly wings and then they will take to the air. And so they're another bug that I just think would be so much fun to be a
This is the largest
dragonfly.
specimen I have.
I can't see it, Gina. What are you pulling up? Is it a big Asianid or
It's the
something?
largest dragonfly specimen that I have
Mm.
found this past fall.
They can live years underwater as babies, eating and dominating everything as they go, and then as they emerge into adults, uh, they are also fierce predators. And so they've got four wings, and they are the only bug that can operate all of those four wings independently. So in air, they can turn on a dime and they can outmaneuver all of their prey, anything that they can encounter. Their thorax is oriented forward so they can grab prey in the air as they're flying. And it's amazing that they're one of the oldest lineages. We can find fossils of dragonflies millions and millions and millions of years before the dinosaurs, and they look identical to dragonflies today, except they were much bigger, way,
Like
way bigger.
how like 3 feet large.
Yeah, like the size of a toddler. And so if you just
Why
imagine,
were they so big?
why were they so big?
Why aren't they so big now? Why didn't they stay so big?
Well, before we get to that, I just want you to sit and imagine what it would be like to live back then and have one of these giant dragonflies flying around hunting you. I think it's so funny. Dragonflies have become such a like feminine symbol on backpacks and purses and earrings. And when I see them, I see like a fierce predator, and it's like people having velociraptors or something.
Yeah.
They're not these gentle flying peaceful creatures. These are fierce predators. And the reason why they've gotten smaller over time is because over the millions and millions of years, the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere has progressively gotten lower and lower and lower, and so they've just shrunk down over time. Oh, I could talk about dragonflies.
Jurassic Park.
Do what, Gina?
I said they should have had a bigger role in Jurassic Park.
I know. Don't
Would
get
have been
me
more
started.
scientifically accurate.
Uh, Damselflies. So damselflies are very similar to dragonflies, except they're typically smaller, and you can identify the immatures based on these gills they have at the end of their tails. So you can see both of these pictures, they've got this very long, slender bodies, and then these gills on the ends of their abdomens that they use to get oxygen out of the water. Where where are the gills on the dragonfly? Where are the where are the gills on the Gina? The dragonflies don't have gills.
They,
What's
how do they breathe?
through their butts? Did you know that? So dragonflies have very special butts that they use not only for breathing, but also for locomotion. So not only are they fierce predators dominating a small ecosystem, eating everything in their path, be it another dragonfly or another bug or a vertebrate like a frog or a fish, they also have butt jet propulsion.
They
And
have
so there's videos.
jets.
It's so much fun. I love catching these guys and then putting them like in a little tray of water, and you'll see them and they will just across the tray and they look like they're just
If it has
flying.
like a little bit of sediment in the bottom of the tray, then you can see like they live like a little jet stream of like clean water, and they like split a path in the sediment, and there's like
Little jet butt jets. So they've got a little respirator, little scuba set in their butts along with some water jets. So dragonflies are just so cool.
All
they've
right.
got a lot of cool facts.
Hey Jenny, I'm gonna pop in here because I know you can't see your screen too well.
There was a couple of questions that popped up in the chat. Um, Trish Stevens says, I'm thinking I was told as a kid that adult dragonflies only live, I missed it, only live a few days, or maybe that was mayflies. My brother chimed in to try to answer that, but if you want to expand on their how long they live.
We'll talk about some bugs that only live a few days, like the mayflies. Dragonflies they've got the best of the best because they can live for a very long time as babies. And as adults, I think it depends on the weather and, um, how lucky they are as far as, battling other dragonflies. But they can live weeks, months as adults. So they live longer as adults than most of the bugs we're going to be talking about today. They also, you can talk about dragonflies all night. Don't get me started. When they mate, you can really tell that they're in love. So this is their official mating position. It's called the wheel, but it forms a little heart as they mate. Oh, it's so cute. And the male will grab on to the female, and he'll hang on to her until she lays her eggs. So there's a lot of competition between dragonflies. I had a friend in graduate school, this girl who she did a little project on dragonflies. And so she went to this pond, and she caught dragonflies, and she painted their backs with different colored nail polish so she could track them. And then she would go every day and she would watch their battles, and she would record how often they battled and who battled who and who won and who lost. And she found that there are some species that are just better fighters than others, and that there are, even within species, there's some individuals that are they just really like to fight, and they'll battle and defend their territory, and they will battle other males, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And if you want to catch a dragonfly, the trick is, if you hang out and you watch long enough, they always tend to return to the same spot. There'll be a perch that they can use to overlook their territory. And you'll notice they tend to come back to the same perch. So you can sit there with a net and just wait for them. When they come to that perch, you can try to grab them, and if you wait long enough, they'll just come back to the same perch. So they're hard to catch, but if you're patient, you can catch them, and they're a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun.
I have one question, Jenny, and I'm not sure if you know the answer to this, and this is just kind of random too, but in terms of like sexing male versus female, I heard that the little tiny black square on the end tip of their wings on the top, which you can kind of see in this photo here, I believe is called like a terastoma, and I think that's how you sex dragonflies. I don't know about damselflies, but someone had told me that a river ranger that I used to work for in California would point out different dragonflies, and he'd be able to tell if it was male or female based on that little black square, how it was oriented, and I think maybe if it was one or two segments that were like filled in and opaque. So I don't know if you knew anything about that, but
The teacher, I have no idea. I have no
other than their
idea.
colors, like their coloration of their bodies, because some of them are the same, male and female, they look like the same. Other than that
I
black square.
haven't heard that, and I don't know. Maybe someone else, maybe was it Bob, can maybe answer that. To my knowledge, I've never heard of that. I every bug I've ever worked with, if they aren't very sexually dimorphic, it's really hard to tell male or female. I was working with these caddisflies for my master's, and I was trying to identify them to species, and I had to spend hours and hours and hours looking at caddisfly reproductive organs under the microscope. There's some complicated machinery down there, and so I'm sure you could sex them and you could figure it out. I'm not sure if it's as easy as black squares. If it is, that would be fantastic.
Yeah,
Just so you know,
I'm not.
Bob is typing a response.
Okay, cool. Maybe we'll get
Ah,
some answers.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, let me know. Let me know. I haven't spent that much of my time identifying adults. So I guess it's an important thing to note that Gina and I we work a lot with aquatic insects, but we are focused on their life forms while they're in the water. And that's because we use insects as an indicator of water quality. And so they let us know if there are any contaminants or things of concern in the water itself. And so we've spent a lot of time looking at their larval forms in the water. I have not spent that much time on the land. And it always gets me into trouble because people know me as Jenny the Bug Girl. And they'll, oh, Jenny, what is it? What's this bug? And I'm like, it's a beetle. And they're like, I know, but what kind? And first of all, they're disappointed I can't tell them the species. There are so many species of bugs you can't identify them as species. And then I have to ask, is it in the water? Is it swimming? Because if it's not, I've got very limited skill set. But what did Bob say? Did he know?
He doesn't know,
Okay,
Yeah,
but
well,
unfortunately, he said he doesn't know the answer about the male and female damsel differentiation.
it
we'll get to it. That's
did
your homework for tonight,
I
those of
just
you at home.
well, I'm on top of it then because I found some after a quick like Google search on ResearchGate. I found I don't it's like a specific kind of dragonfly, but I got the terminology wrong for what it's called. But apparently, it's like a just like a certain color polymorphism, and the territorial male will have an elongated one, so it's less square. That black square is more like a rectangle. It's a little bit more elongated, and I guess at least for a certain species of damselfly, it'll look that way when they're territorial, right? Or at a certain stage where they're like trying to assert like their territory. Um, a sneaker male, this is really funny. A sneaker male will make itself what the male that is depositing his eggs currently. So like the left side of the heart is the male, and he's got his wing things colored in because he's a sneaker male and he's trying to imitate a female to throw off other male dragonflies, the territorial ones. And then the females typically have clear, where that square is, it's like clear or white. So this one is not showing that, but I guess it depends on the species. But I was at least like somewhat correct.
I love when you have bug facts that I don't know. I love
They're
it.
like kind of useless, but also kind of interesting, and I love it.
Uh, all right, moving on.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. We've
oh,
got more bugs.
oh, these guys, these guys, giant water bugs. Uh, these are one of my favorites. I think they're super cute. This person on the left is very brave. That picture of the person holding them in their hand. I have that picture just to show you the size of them. But do you know what they're also called, Gina? Do you know what their other common name is?
I don't remember.
Toe biters. They're also called toe biters. And
Why would they be called a toe biter?
I have never been bitten by one. But
I
I
don't
had a
think.
friend, my friend Tammy, so we were working in this creek and we're in this pool area and we're digging around trying to collect some bugs and we had seen this big toe biter that swam up in these plants and she said, "Oh, I really want that bug." So she threw her hands in. She came screaming out, or she pulled her hand back and she had the happiest look I'd ever seen. And she goes, "I think I just got bit by a toe biter." It's like, "What is wrong with you?" And she said, "Oh, I just have always been wanting to bit by one." And her look of happiness quickly turned into sadness and then pain because they are true bugs. What do we know about true bugs? They have
Pointing
those
mouths, the sucking
pointing,
mouths.
sucking mouth parts, and you can see in this picture in the bottom right, his little mouth. And so you think about a bug as big as this one in this person's hand with a big biter piercing into your hand, and then they're also injecting proteolytic enzymes to start dissolving your hand away. She spent the rest of the evening, the rest of the afternoon, we were driving back from our field site with her hand in the air conditioning vent trying to cool it off, and she has cursed toe biters ever since. But yeah, it's not something you necessarily want to get bit by. I don't know where they're called toe biters. I don't know if maybe if you're in a creek barefoot, which you should never do. Maybe
That's exactly why.
it's one of the reasons why you don't. I love these guys because they're super cute, and it is a great example of paternity. Chivalry's not dead, ladies. Look at these toe biters across their back. That's all their babies, all their offspring. So the female will lay her eggs on the back of the male, and he will look after them while they're developing, guarding against them from predators, and he just keeps watch out of them until they're born. And so if you ever come across any of these out in the creek, and you see any of these dots on their back, you know automatically that that's the male. The other really cool thing about these, I think I read a paper where they were trying to figure out if, I'm not sure if the science has backed this up, but there's a lot of just folk knowledge that they can sense flash floods. And so a lot of times you will find them right before a big rain. They're attracted to lights, big mercury vapor lights, street lights, or by gas stations. A lot of times you'll see these guys. So if you're not lucky enough to see them at the creek itself, next time you're out before there's a big storm, take a minute to look around, the different street lights, and sometimes you'll see these bugs. This is another common one on that What's That Bug website where people find them, attracted. They're at the grocery store getting milk, and then they get confronted with one of these giant water bugs, and people always freak out.
Hey,
I'd
quick question, Jenny.
Sure.
I stepped away for a second. Did you get to the question about are they related to trilobites?
Oh, I did not see that. These are not, I would say trilobites are very similar to like a pill bug. And like those roly-poly bugs, which are technically crustaceans. So these are true bugs, and they're more closely related to the toad bugs and the other bugs with those piercing mouth parts that we've been talking about. All right, I'm going to pick it up a little bit because I know we
Got a
don't
lot
want to
of
be here.
to
Look,
cover.
Gina and I, we could talk about bugs all night.
Which is why, Daryl, we
Just-
need a whole series.
We will
We're
do
gonna
a whole.
We're gonna have to. This is just the highlights here. All right, water boatmen. These are very cute, very prominent bugs that you'll see swimming around in the water column. So these are ones that aren't going to be suspended to some leaf litter or some plants. You're not going to see them hiding on the bottom. You're going to see them active in the water column swimming around. And they're called water boatmen because they look like a little man paddling a boat underwater. And so these are also true bugs. They've got that piercing, biting mouth part. You can see it kind of in this picture. And they propel themselves with these large oar-like back legs that they move just like oars of a paddle. And they're super cute. They've got these really bright red eyes, and they are these that I've had pictures, they are adults with wings. And so they've got the best of both worlds. So they can swim around underwater, hunting bugs, doing little whatever water boatmen do during the day. And if they ever need to leave the pond or creek that they're in to find a mate or try to find something else to eat, they can fly also, which is pretty cool. Most of the bugs that we're talking about, they either live in the water the whole time, or uh, um, or they're in the water as babies and then they emerge and are flying around as adults. So water boatmen are really cool because you can find them in the water, but then they also can fly around on land. And so they are true bugs with those piercing, biting mouth parts. And so you can see here in the upper right, you may not be able to make out what it is he's eating, but that is a mosquito pupa. So a lot of these bugs that I've shown, they're really important in keeping down, mosquitoes, mosquito populations, because pretty much everything I've shown you likes to eat mosquitoes. All right, last one. I can't leave out water scorpions. I love these guys. They look very similar to the giant water bug toe biters that I showed you, except they're equipped with a snorkel. And it's where you would expect to find a snorkel on a bug. They're butts. Butt snorkels. There's two different forms that you tend to find. So what I'm holding here in the bottom left, they look almost like walking sticks. They've got this thinner body form, and then his tail down on the bottom there, that's his snorkel. And then this one on the right, it looks more like those creeping water bugs because he's got like a wider body cavity, but you can see him there sticking his snorkel up in the air at the water surface breathing. And so these guys are really cool. You'll see them, and they can get really big, and unlike normal land scorpions, these guys they can't sting you because their scorpion tail, it's just a snorkel. It's not an actual stinger. They can bite you, I guess, with their piercing, sucking mouth parts, but I've never been bitten by one.
Are they predaceous as well?
Most of the water bugs,
especially the beetles too.
Well, beetles are predators, but they've got different mouth parts. So they've got those mandibles that are really good for like biting their prey and breaking them into smaller pieces. And so these true bugs have a different feeding strategy. And so they've got those straw-like mouth parts to jam into the exoskeleton of their prey and suck out all the good stuff. And so bugs like this, they're either eating other bugs or plants. So sometimes some true bugs, they'll use that mouth part to stab into a plant and then they'll suck up the sap. So they're not all predators, but most of them are. Oh, okay. We're moving on. Do y'all have any questions? I can't see the text box, so let me know if I'm...
Daryl called you a nerd.
Yeah.
So surprising.
Yeah, you wouldn't be the first. All right, we just got two more habitats to go through. So we're still in a pool.
Hold on, Jenny. Before you move on, Lori Gunter is typing a question, so let's wait until she gets her question. While we're waiting for Lori's question, let them know how the presence of these aquatic insects relate to water quality. Just really quick. Try to be quick at least.
Gina, why don't you?
Sure. Okay. So we're about to cover the next couple of groups of bugs, essentially, that really tell you a lot about water quality. And essentially, with a lot of other concepts in biodiversity, it has to do with abundance and diversity. So how much do you have, and how many different things do you have? And ideally, we're looking for high numbers of both. Specifically for aquatic insects, in terms of water quality, we're looking for like a specific taxa of bugs. So we're looking for mayflies, caddisflies, and stoneflies, which we're getting to, right? Because they live in a different habitat. And based on those specifically, we've kind of, I say we, no, people much smarter than me have calibrated essentially an equation where you can plug in how many and the different kinds you have.
I'm just going to jump in. So what Gina's explaining is what we call a biotic index. And so what we're showing you here is just a tiny snippet of the diversity that you would find in streams of aquatic invertebrates. And they all have varying tolerances to different types of disturbances. So some are very sensitive to different chemicals and contaminants that might be in the water. Some are very sensitive to droughts. Some are very sensitive to other changes in hydrology like flashiness. And so Gina and I and other people that are trained with identifying these aquatic invertebrates, we can go to a creek or a stream, catch bugs, and then we can read it just like a surgeon reads your body or a doctor reads your body. So when you go to the doctor, they take what your temperature and your heart rate, and they might listen to your lungs. Well, and that is all telling the doctor how healthy you are. Well, instead of measuring those things, we use the bugs to assess it. So these bugs tell us how healthy the stream is, and not only how healthy the creek is, but what the specific problem is. So are we dealing with a contaminant problem? Is it nutrient loading? Gina just did an amazing bit of detective work in North Carolina identifying some sources of sedimentation into what river was that, Gina? From that horse?
White Oak Creek. White Oak Creek is a tributary of the Green River, which is a larger tributary of the Broad,
So there she was
which runs into the.
out taking water samples and looking at bugs, and they noticed that all the bugs were very rich and diverse. And then as soon as they reached this horse farm, it just everything died out, and the just diversity was gone. And they correct me if I'm wrong. I'm retelling your story, Gina, but y'all went out sometime
Sure.
right after it had rained, and you were able to see all of the
Yeah.
sediments coming into the creek from the rain. And
Yeah.
had they not, you could only see it when it was raining, and so they were able to identify the problem by looking at the bugs, and they knew to come back to figure out what was going on.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm going to chime in really quick because Lori asked the question about whether the bugs were an indicator species for their habitat. And Jenny, you've been doing a wonderful job explaining that. Both of you have. But Lori was still a little confused. So if you don't mind, I'm going to try to explain it to Lori. I'm one of those, like, the simplest kind of teachers there are. So Lori, this is for you.
Yeah.
Literally what they're saying when they're talking about the diversity of bugs is just how many different kinds of bug species there are. And so believe it or not, and besides the different species, the number of bugs within the stream. And so this is the crazy part, and I think this is what you'll understand, Lori, is when you go to a stream and you start flipping rocks and looking for what kind of insects are in there, the more insects you find and the more different kinds of insects you find, the cleaner the water is, the better the quality of that water. Because a lot of these insects are really temperamental to pollution or other contaminants, and they die out. So whenever you go to a water body, especially a creek or anything, and you see lots of different kinds or the right kinds of insects in there, and not just different kinds, but high numbers of them, you know that the water is usually really, really high quality, good water. I hope that explained it. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
That's great.
No, that's correct. I would also add that there are.
Go ahead.
Jenny, I can't hear your microphone very well. Sorry if I
Okay,
interrupted.
no, go ahead, Gina.
I was just gonna add that we do have specific insects that are like particularly indicative of clean water, and their presence or absence will help kind of delineate if the creek is kind of polluted or not. And we're about to get into that. So they don't live in pools though. So we've kind of organized the PowerPoint by habitat. And these next couple of insects you're gonna see the yeah
And
they'll be more indicative.
I also just want to make the point of remember at the beginning when I was talking about different creeks in different parts of the world or in even the country, they look different. And so don't confuse like muddy, cloudy water with dirty water. Because where I started my life as a freshwater ecologist was in north central Texas, where it was all these muddy bottom prairie streams where you're not going to get the clear water like you find where I live now in southeast Tennessee. And just because the water's muddy doesn't mean it's dirty, because you could go to places in north central Texas that has very rich biodiversity, lots of really good bugs and critters, very healthy streams. It's just they're healthy for what they are. So don't come to a water body and see that the water's not clear and think, oh, it must be dirty. I'm not going to find a lot of bugs there. 'Cause that's not the case.
And vice versa. If you see clean water, it doesn't mean that it's like clean,
Hmm.
clean.
Just because,
It could have a lot of other contaminants that isn't like doesn't make it cloudy. So
And
it
I'll
works
give you
both
one
ways. It's not
example.
always what it seems.
And I'll let you get on so you finish this. But an example, when I grew up in Western New York, and we'd go to the Adirondacks, and the water was crystal clear. You could see down to the bottom. It looked so pristine, but it is literally dead because of
Hmm.
the acid rain type of thing. It was beautiful looking water, but it was literally a desert when it came to aquatic life.
It's
but
sad.
I am always amazed at how resilient bugs are, water bugs. And I did a lot of my work at the beginning in very polluted. I worked in wastewater effluent, and there are some times where I was just amazed at how many bugs you can find. If there's water, you're gonna find bugs there, unless there's something very, very wrong. All right, moving on, because I'm sure y'all, we got to get to these next couple bugs because they're our favorite. All right, let's talk about, so we're still in a pool area, and we're going to talk about bugs that are not living in the water, but now we're going down to the substrate. And we're going to go down into the substrate and talk about some really cool burrowing bugs. And so some of my favorite bugs on the planet are these burrowing mayflies. And so these are mayflies that have, a lot of them have these cute little tusks, little rhinoceros tusks, and they've got these modified forearms for digging, kind of like those mole crickets that I showed you earlier. And you're going to find these in um, not necessarily sandy substrate or big rocky cobble substrate. You're going to find them in like clay, dirt, mud, where they can burrow into it. If it's too sandy, the burrows will collapse. Burrows will collapse on top of them, and so you'll see these in more muddy areas. And if you look on the banks of the creek or the river, especially when the water goes down a little, you'll see all these little holes about the size of a thumb, and those holes are the burrows where these mayflies have come out. And I think they're so cute. They've got these gills across their back that are just really delicate and pretty, and sometimes you'll see them just fluttering these little gills, and
Very active.
they're they're very active, charismatic critters. Like when you catch them and you can put them in a little tray of water and you just watch them moving around, skittering around. They're super cute. And just a reminder, this is what an adult mayfly looks like. I hear all the time people confusing crane flies with mayflies. And where's my soapbox? These are mayflies. They're very different than crane flies. They are one of the oldest aquatic insects lineages, and uh, these are the ones. I can't remember who had the question earlier. Confusing these with the dragonflies. These are what you're thinking of. They only live for a day or two. So they're in the order Ephemeroptera. You can see it here in the top left, and that refers to the fact that they're ephemeral. They can live.
Someone mentioned that too in the comments,
Yeah, they're,
which was good for you
yeah.
guys.
Pop in at any point, Gina. Uh, they're ephemeral.
I just mentioned someone noticed that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Define ephemeral.
they very short-lived. So they will live for months, some even years as babies, but then they only live for hours or a day, maybe 2 days. So they don't have mouths as adults. So sometimes they can lap up a little bit of flower nectar, but they don't have a digestive system like some of the other adult forms that we've talked about. And so, what's the whole point of of being an adult, making this transition to find love, yeah, to reproduce. And so they will hatch out in mass. And so they tend to synchronize their hatches when they go from babies to adults so that there's a higher chance that they're going to find a mate. And so you'll find these swarming in the hundreds, thousands. I know there's some places by the Great Lakes in the Northwest that when these mayflies hatch, a lot of the houses around the lakes and the water bodies have to turn off all their street lights because all the frogs will be
Mhm.
attracted to the lights and they'll be like feet deep in
Yes.
mayflies. They'll have
Yeah.
to
I worked.
I wanna see one of these things. I've never gotten to see a big mayfly hatch like that. It'd be fun to be
Yeah.
very,
Yeah. I've seen piles. It was like snowdrifts, like in the
yeah,
streets under piled up under lights. It was
yeah.
insane. This was like in the New River in southwestern Virginia.
You got to see a hatch? Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
So I did
Yeah.
my
And
dissertation. I lived in Hungary for 7 months, and I was working on this river called the Tisa River that has the largest mayfly on the planet, and they're one of these tusked burrowing mayflies like this. Is Palilingua longicauda is the name, which means they call it the Tisa flower because when these
oh,
hatch, they uh, they call it the flowering of the river. And there's an amazing, you can find it on YouTube, a clip of Sir David Attenborough in a little canoe on the Tisa River as these things are hatching and emerging. And I tried so hard when I was over there to time my field work around the hatch, and I missed it by a couple of days. And so I had the opportunity to go back the next summer, and I missed it again. So, Gina, next
no.
trip, we have to see that they're big. These mayflies are like this big. When they
That's
hatch,
insane.
oh, can you imagine? But so just keep this in mind over the spring and the summer when you happen to find one of these guys and they get lost in your house. They've only got a day to find a mate. Let them back out. Don't let them don't let them die alone in your house. Just let them out and maybe they'll have a chance of love. They've only got a day, you know. All right, moving on. What else we got here? Oh, mussels. I would be failing you if I didn't take just a brief minute to talk about mussels. And they may not seem like the most interesting thing. I mean, what do you think of when you think of a mussel?
Uncharismatic minor fauna.
Yeah, I mean, they just kind of like they don't really do much. They just kind of sit
They're like living rocks.
like living rocks. We've overlooked them as scientists for a long time because everyone wants to study dragonflies and beetles and the big charismatic microfauna. I'm gonna use that, Gina. That's great. But as we grew as freshwater ecologists, as scientists, we started to understand the importance of these critters, and they're actually a keystone species, and that means that they are a species that everything else in the ecosystem is dependent on, just like the keystone of a brick doorway. And so if we lose the
hmm
freshwater mussels, then a lot of other animals that are either directly or independently um, depending on them are also at risk and also in trouble. And so one of the amazing things about them is their ability to clean water. And so mussels are filter feeders. And so they sit in the sediment and they filter the water. And this is just, I stole this off the internet, American Rivers, and this just shows a tank of mussels, after 24 hours, they've completely cleared all of the sediment and algae and whatnot growing in the water. They've completely cleared it out. And so when we lose freshwater mussels because we're damming rivers, siltation issues, water quality issues, they have been harvested to extinction because they were sought after. People made buttons, and my advisor Brewer told me that people used to make uh, pearls out of them. What are they? Appalachian pearls. Oh, I'm gonna hear it here in a second. I can feel his fingers typing. But they used to make
I want to make
them.
one distinction really
Sure.
fast. Um, I just read in the comments that someone asked if are mussels bugs? No, mussels are not bugs in the sense that we define true bugs, but they are invertebrates, like aquatic invertebrates. So they're not bugs technically, but they lack a spine and they live in the water and they are
Insects.
significant.
But they're
Yeah,
bugs, I guess. Right? I mean, if a spider's a bug,
but they're
a muscle's a bug.
they're mollusks, bivalves.
So, other really cool thing, what do mussels do? They filter water and they sit there. They filter water and they sit there. How do they get around?
It's a good
How do they
question.
get? I mean, they can't really they can't really open their mouths and they can't really swim.
No,
Maybe they could get a little bit, and they've got like that mantle and that foot that they can drag themselves around. But
yeah,
you know, like how do as a population, like how do they disperse? Do you know? Do you know, Gina? Oh, I hope you don't know, and I can blow your mind. What's that? What does that look like to you?
hair,
Hair? What else?
little cilia.
Tell her pipe in. It looks like another bug, or maybe like a little fish, something like that. So mussels, a lot of mussels have these very elaborate lures. And some of them, oh, if you're bored on a Friday night, if you've got a date and you really want to impress them, get on YouTube and start looking up mussel lures. And some of them, they look like little fish and they wave this little lure around, or some look like a little worm. And it looks like a little fish or a little worm. And it brings in other fish that are hunting, looking for prey or whatnot. And it brings them really close to the mussel. And then you know what happens? I'm going to take that as a no.
Do they get do they get eaten?
No, no.
What happens?
As the fish gets close to the mussel goes bleh, and it spits babies all over it. And then the little babies, they grab on and they grab onto the gills and to the outside of the fish. And then as that fish swims to another part of the creek, the babies drop off and they let go. And that's how mussels move around a creek. So it's actually pretty cool because they use this like these deceptive lures to lure in other fish, and then they spit babies at them. All right, all right.
All right, before you go on,
Can we talk a little
yeah,
bit?
before you go on, there's quite a bit of chatter in the chat box about my brother confused everyone, or at least confused some people, because he started talking about obligate parasites of fish, with mussels being obligate parasites. So I wanted someone to do a better definition of explaining what that means.
What an obligate parasite is?
Well,
It is. Well, I would say it's an organism that requires another organism to complete its development, and it could be. I mean, I don't like using the word parasite just because the babies that latch on, they're not hurting the host fish necessarily. They're not sucking nutrients and blood from the fish. They're just catching a ride. But they do need the other fish to be able to move and complete their life cycle.
So the parasite in this sense that we're using isn't necessarily like it would be considered a symbiotic relationship, meaning mutually beneficial, but the host doesn't really benefit. They're not being hurt, but they're not benefiting, therefore they're a parasite.
So they have a commensal relationship. It benefits one but doesn't hurt the other.
Someone also mentioned, I'm gonna scroll up a little bit, uh, that they get nutrients from the fish to metamorphose to juvenile muscles drop off. Hold on, that
Oh, I didn't
sounds a little
know.
confusing.
That makes sense.
So do they get nutrients or do they just hitch a ride?
My understanding is they just hitch a ride.
Okay.
But mussels are not my area of expertise, and really, there's a lot. There's some people that know way more than I do about this group because they are so important as a keystone
They
species.
get they So Bob has specified that they do get
They
nutrients
do.
there, but they still don't harm the fish,
Okay.
which is pretty interesting because how would they then absorb nutrients? Are they still like open a little bit and like
Maybe they
latch on
just
and absorb it because
maybe they eat some of the like fish slime, the fish goo on the fish, but not
like the
suckers.
biofilm that lives on fish scales?
Hmm.
Bob R is typing. He'll let us know what's
Okay.
up.
Next time I'll turn Bob's microphone on. I don't want to try it now because I don't want to screw anything up, but
That'd be fun.
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that'd be fun.
And I don't know if everyone is enjoying the banter between the biologist nerds here, but by all means, if we say anything or type anything that you don't understand, just please let us know.
Okay, I'm just gonna move on to our last and final habitat here.
Yes,
Uh,
we still have the most important
yes,
habitat.
this is the creme de la creme. This is the like, if you want to find some bugs, this is where you gotta go. This is where you're gonna find the highest diversity. It's the easiest to find the bugs. Typically, the water is shallower, so if you only want to get knee deep and not like face deep in a pool, this is where you want to go. And so this is where the water is shallow. Typically, you'll find rocks, more turbulent water. And so this is just, I just had to throw this up just for nostalgia. This is a riffle that I spent 2 years of my life studying in north central Texas. And so this is where there's a big pool you can see right in front of me, and then there's just this big wall of rocks where there's just some. I just this is where I became a bug biologist. Was in this riffle, and so this is just really near and dear to my heart. Some of these bugs, specifically net spinning caddisflies. So what I am doing right here is I have this bucket up on the riffle with a little bit of water in it, and then I'm picking up rocks, and then I have a little scrub brush just like you would use to clean your dishes, and I'm scrubbing things off the rocks, dislodging them, and then I would take them back to the lab and look at them under the microscope. And what I was collecting, what I was looking at are these guys right here, net spinning caddisflies. Just want to take a second for a shout out for Jane Hamscree. I need to meet this woman. Most of the pictures that I've pulled in this presentation are from her, and she's just done amazing work. I hope this semester to be able to get some macro shots of some of this stuff, but it's just really incredible when you get down with a camera with a macro lens and you can really see things on a different perspective. It's a whole nother world down here. So you can see here on the bottom, these caddisflies, they make these fixed retreats. Caddisflies, they're a lot like little moths and butterflies where the caterpillar stage is under the water and the adults look like little moths, and they have silk glands where they can construct these little retreats that they live in, and then they also build these nets out of silk, and they look like little fisherman nets. They're these little squares, and that's exactly what they do. They're little fishermen that they put these nets out in the water, and they collect uh, microcrustaceans and other particulates in the water, and then they
Jenny,
what?
Sorry,
Oh.
it's you cut out for a
Oh.
second for me, but never mind. You're good. You're good. Just a minute.
Oh, you're good. So they build these little
Sorry.
nets and they can calibrate the nets so that they can make the pore sizes bigger or smaller depending on how fast the water's flowing or how turbid it is, so the nets don't get clogged in the water. And they fish. They're super, super cute. They've got some of them have these ornate head capsules that are just painted little bugs,
Hmm.
and you'll find them uh, just in little riffle areas, and they're caddisflies are typically associated with clean water, but you'll find them even in some dirty, muddy water. And these particular bugs are just happy there. Um,
If they look really common when you turn over rocks. You might not notice their nets can be delicate if you're looking for them and you can't um, uh, like if it's hard to look at them underwater because they're so tiny and their nets are so small. Um, and when you're turning over rocks, you tend to kind of like break apart their webs um, or their nets. But if you turn over a rock, and I remember seeing this a lot as a child and never knowing what it was, but seeing it looks like a cornucopia or like a funnel, and it's really tiny, and they just dot the undersides of like larger stones that are under water, under fast moving water. Um, they look like uh, trumpet shapes, and they can be a little bit hollow inside. And it's typically either like the current or past habitat of a caddisfly. So if you see those, you'll usually see a lot of them, and that's how you can tell that they live there.
yeah, you'll see them sometimes. They'll just be growing on top of each other, these little caddisfly condominiums, and they'll be under the rock, on top of the rocks. Uh, in that fast flowing water. So they make a living by sitting there with these nets out, waiting for their food to come to them.
Yep.
Our next
What a
group.
life.
Can you tell that every group is our favorite?
Caddisflies in particular, though, because there's so many different kinds, and they're all kind of unique in their own ways. Case building caddisflies are probably my favorite bug of all the bugs, and I know we say that about all the bugs, but these ones I just think are, I don't know, intelligent in a really creative way. They're little architects, and they literally grab things from their environment and they build cases around themselves like little mummy sleeping bags, and they can drag their cases around, and they just remind me of some sort of like character out of like an anime or a show or something out of like a children's story, because as you can see, the caddisfly on the left has like snail shells and rocks and sticks, and it's like a mixed media artist. And the caddisfly on the right is very uniform and very neat and tidy, and they carefully selected granules of sand of the exact same size and made it so smooth on the outside. And they're different species, and like even within the same species, the stuff that they collect are just like whatever they choose. And I think the fact that they have, I don't know what else to call it other than like autonomy or intelligence to like select things and add it to their home on their back is like mind blowing. Like what else does that? What else does that?
Some
I don't know. I
choose
think
to
it's really cool.
make their art in just little pieces of wood, and others have, they choose like little pebbles medium as their medium, and some make a very long tube that's straight, and others they will make this spiral that looks almost like spiraling snail shell. And I don't think we have pictures on here, but there's a lady that will grow these in little tanks, and she'll give them only precious stones as the substrate. So they'll make these little
Hmm.
cases out of obsidian and little gold flakes and all sorts of just
And
pretty crushed up opals and um, turquoise. And then when the bugs emerge and they become little moths, she collects the cases and makes jewelry out of it. And so,
like little earrings.
yes, see, You
little caddisfly case earrings.
get joy.
But I think we should make, if we're doing a series, I think we could do an entire series literally just on caddisflies. So I wanted to save some Easter eggs to incorporate into this video, but we could talk a lot about just these
Don't get
just these guys.
And the larva forms, the babies, because they make these intricate cases. They're really well known for their cases, and there's so many people that know the bugs, but they don't know what the adults look like. So
Yeah.
I just had to put a couple pictures so you can see they do look a lot like moths. They carry their wings over their back like a little pyramid, and you can find the adults real easily at night. Just walk down the creek with a headlamp, and they will fly in your face. Or just
Yes,
light
they
a
will.
sheet up and put a light against it, and they will just be attracted to the sheet, and you'll be able to see them. Funny story. So when I was working on my master's and I was starting to get some of my tattoos, and my major professor at the time, I was really excited because he liked tattoos. I was getting them, and he kept, oh, what about this? What about that? And I didn't have any bug tattoos, so I told him, oh, Dr. Kennedy, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm gonna get these bug tattoos. He's like, oh, what are you gonna get? You're gonna get, a big mayfly. I was like, no, I think I'm gonna get a caddisfly. And he's like, oh, with what kind of case? And I said, no, I'm gonna get an adult on, flower. And he goes, an adult, but they're so drab. Is why he had the nerve to call these caddisflies drab. And so I said, okay, Dr. Kennedy, you think you want me to, you think mayflies are better? Okay. And so I went to the tattoo artist and I said, okay, I'm going to get this mayfly tattoo. And I showed him a picture of the adult and I said, you're the artist, you can do whatever you want, but this is important. And they have to have these body segments and these veins and are important and the wings and these aren't, but you're the artist, do whatever. And he goes, and then he won't take my calls. Like too specific so I'm still waiting for my mayfly tattoo, but I think an adult caddisfly would be just as pretty. All right, moving on. What do we got?
Okay, how many more you got? You got a lot
Black
more? You
flies.
guys have been talking for an hour and a half. You got a bunch more, Jenny?
No, I got two more.
Okay.
We got flies here. So these guys are super super cute because you'll see them.
Only a few more.
Yeah. So you'll see these like on the bottom in the fast flowing rivers, and they've got these really cute like labial fans that they just put out in the water, and they're filter feeders, and they're super super cute. But as adults, they are bloodsuckers. So these are one of the ones that you want to keep your eye out for. So they're super cute when they're babies, but when they're adults, they are bloodsuckers and they do carry a lot of diseases. I had a bad experience once. Oh, more mayflies. What more we got here? Mayflies, stoneflies. Do you want to pick your favorite, Gina? Do you want to pick one?
Stoneflies really quick because we talked about indicator species earlier, and I think they're more indicative even than mayflies. So stoneflies, Plecoptera, their Latin family name, and some of my favorite stoneflies are also super predaceous and they move very quickly, and they're like the charismatic megafauna of the bug world, um, aside from the toe-biting beetles. So the Plecopteras are some of my favorite. I think they have some really cool coloration. I think it looks kind of like one of those ink blot tests or like the Rorschach tests. If you can kind of just like get it to stand still enough in your hand, you just kind of get lost in like what this design looks like, and they're really pretty. And I'm also really excited to see them anytime I find them in streams because they're one of the most sensitive bugs that we have. Um, like ever. So in terms of pollution, they're really, really, really sensitive to metals, to turbidity, basically anything that we consider like an important water quality parameter. These guys require very like high amounts of dissolved oxygen and very low turbidity and basically pristine water. So I noticed someone said like someone's into fly fishing or fishing or whatever. Yeah, these because they're really big, they're really active. these stoneflies and mayflies, caddisflies to some degree as well, but that's what a lot of the flies and ties are modeled after are these guys. So that's pretty cool. Trout love them. Trout will also occupy some of those really high quality, pristine watersheds. So they happen to exist in the same place, and it's not a coincidence. They're a major food source for trout.
So that's our
Well, you know.
virtual creek-in adventure, and I just have to leave you with just a couple tips, and that is if you go out creeking, make sure you've got proper footwear, things that won't slip, and just keep in mind of like how deep you want to go, and look out for glass. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of the mountains. Just be really careful when you're like digging in the sediment or looking for bugs, because there's always glass and other trash, and I've seen some people seriously hurt themselves just because they weren't paying attention. I always bring a trash bag to pick up trash, like be a good steward. And also, if you go out flipping rocks, make sure you put them back when you found them. You don't want to go through just pulverizing the habitat that you're trying to explore. And I would also caution explore things, pick things up, but if you're going to take any invertebrates, don't collect mussels or crayfish unless you're sure of what you're taking, because many of them are endangered species and it's illegal for you to take them. So just be very cautious anything that you're taking from the habitat, that you're not taking endangered species.
One more thing. Okay, so yeah, in terms of resources of things that y'all can get for more information, um, Jenny, I'll let you handle the app because I don't know much about that. And that specific book is an awesome guide. In addition, since I do a lot of citizen science work, people might not have access to phone apps or like collegiate, you know, textbooks or anything. There are a ton of resources if you look up like macro identifying ID guidebook or something. So there's a lot of different like stream teams. Can you see my air quotes? Stream teams or citizen science monitoring groups that are all ordinary citizens that are trained in how to identify them. And there are resources, there are like ID sheets that look like this all over online, um, that have pictures of bugs and how to identify them and what they are and stuff. I would just look up ID resources on Google Images and you'll be sure to find
Before
some.
before
Pretty
Jenny
handy
pops in,
at the old
wait,
school.
no, go back, please. Okay, I didn't know, Jenny, if you were going to mention something, but I cannot believe you showed this because that Aquabugs app that is showing there is the Isaac Walton League. It's from the Isaac Walton League of America. I used to work for them about 20 some
Really?
years ago. And would you believe every picture or every bug that you see on that picture there, I drew for them. Yeah, I
No
drew all those
way!
bugs back around 2000, so almost 20 years ago, and they converted that into a bug identification. They paid me for drawing those. It's kind of nice, but every drawing you see there is one that I did. It's how small of a world is it? I had no idea you would even put that up there.
That's crazy! Not only is bug illustration Jenny and I's budding passion. We're trying I'm trying to learn more about that, but also the Isaac Walton League developed my citizen science
Yes.
program
Yeah,
20
that
years
was
ago.
I was working for them at that time. And the funny thing is, I was pulling my hair out because some of the like the dragonflies, the venation is extremely intricate
Yeah.
and you have to get it exact. And when I started drawing the dragonflies for them, I'm like, I'm never going to get this perfect from the left side to the right side. So I learned a neat little trick is I would just draw half a bug. And then I would just like
And then
copy and paste and
Photoshop.
invert it and stick the two together so they're identical from side to side. And so some of those dragonflies, it was a whole lot easier for me to draw a half a bug and then just invert it and paste it on the other side. So
That's
I had
genius.
no idea. I remember you telling me stories about your work as an illustrator, but I didn't know this was just a resource that came up on the Society of Freshwater Science that I've used it a little bit. It'll get you to order and sometimes family. And it's a pretty good tool. And now I'm going to use it all the time. And like my friend Daryl drew this.
Well,
Check us out.
a funny thing,
That's
when they were
awesome.
putting together that invertebrate guide, I remember our freshwater biologist who was working for us. She was trying to find an artist to draw all that, and she was soliciting bids. And I walked by her office, and I told her, I said, I could draw some of those if you want. And she kind of rolled her eyes. She's like, okay. And so I drew a couple, and I showed them to her, and like her eyes bugged, and she goes, send me a bid. Let me know what we need to pay you. And I never drew anything to get paid, and so I submitted a bid like per drawing, and like she hired me on the spot. I'm like, I lowballed it, didn't I? She's like, yeah, the next nearest competitor was twice as much as you. I'm like, son of a gun.
Oh, I love that.
That's really, really cool.
Now, when you all get this app, you should solicit Daryl for an autograph.
You should.
All right, I'm gonna advance.
He'll put out a bid for it.
All right, I'll take over this part. Everyone that's on here, and I shouldn't say everyone, most people that are on here know about this Wildlife for You program. There's a website you can go to see what classes are coming up. Click it again. One of the easiest ways to follow us is through Facebook or Twitter. We just started the Twitter. In fact, one of the people on here, Trish Stevens, is the one that designed our Twitter feed. But you'll hear about all the new classes we have on Wildlife for You through Facebook if you follow us. That's fantastic. And I will tell you, this is the first time that Jenny and Gina have joined us, and you can see their passion for bugs. This is why I only get the right instructors. I want the instructors that love what they're doing and can talk all night long, even though we've got to cut them short next time.
We ran out of bugs.
No, you guys
We didn't run
you guys
out
could
of bugs.
do
We ran out of
such
time.
amazing series, and we need to get kids involved or younger kids to listen to this because they'll eat this stuff up. So, yeah, you were awesome. Jenny, if you could click really, I just got to do a couple more. Okay, mark your calendars. Go ahead and click. Oh, click. Well, I already did that one. We've got a couple of classes from Kim DeLozier. There's 2 bear classes. Y'all know Kim DeLozier. He was the head biologist for Great Smoky Mountain National Park. He's going to be doing one on bear encounters, and then this other one in March will be black bear management, so sign up for that. And I believe that should be the last
How
one.
cute it is.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Anyway, Gina and Jenny, thank you so much. Are there any other questions y'all have for them? You can tell they're passionate about bugs.
Happy birthday, Kelly.
Kelly, it's amazing. I'm 49 years old too. We're pretty equal there. So
Well, I really appreciate you all spending your Sunday night.
Yeah.
Any-
Yep. It's been a blast. I'm really happy that we could have so many people join us, and thank you, Daryl, for hosting us. And this like super incredible platform and resource for education is really, really, really cool to experience, the back end of it. And I'm interested in taking other classes too. So this is a really,
Oh,
really cool
absolutely.
platform.
Gina, you did fantastic. Jenny, you too. We definitely have to sit down. The 2 things that came out of this. One, we could do so many different bug classes. You could just focus on caddisflies and do a whole class just on those. We tried squeezing everything in tonight. But another thing that I really enjoy, and it seems to work out well, is the discussion amongst biologists. So we could take a topic like trophic cascades or something like that, and we just have like a community engagement type of evening.
I think
That would be awesome.
that's why I really wanted to bring Gina on here, is just because we do have different experiences, and it is fun just discussing these things together.
And a couple comments from the students here. Lori asked a question: do all these different bugs have specified jobs in their habitat? Can someone answer that relatively quickly?
Yes. Yes. Yes, they do. They all live different places and eat different things, and they all have their own niches established.
Yeah, and believe it or not, Lori, that's a really cool thing. I think you participated in a couple of our classes regarding trophic cascades, and it's pretty much how nature and the ecosystem all is intricately woven together. And whenever you lose one species, things could get shaken up pretty drastically. Not only is it losing a species, but also gaining a species that's not supposed to be there. For example, an invasive critter that doesn't belong in that environment, that can be equally disruptive. And so all what Jenny just mentioned, the niche or the niche that these creatures have, they all perform a specific duty within that ecosystem. And so by losing one or gaining one, you could really shake things up. And Bob chimed in, says some are filter feeders, some are predators, some are grazers. So they all work together, fill in that special duty that they serve the particular ecosystem.
And they're a critical.
And yeah, again,
Yeah, they're this critical step between, the, energy, that from the algae and different leaf litter and whatnot to the fish and other charismatic organisms that most people think of when they go to a creek. And so without the bugs, we're not going to have frogs and fish.
yep.
All right, and apparently Donna looked up where you work, Gina, and she thinks it's fascinating.
Mountain True's awesome. I love it here. We're doing some really cool projects. Check out our website, mountaintrue.org. If you're ever in Western North Carolina, we'd love to get you involved and like hanging out in our creeks, and you can help us look for bugs. I'm going to be hosting a training here in March. Contact me if y'all want more information. I don't know where y'all coming from, but our doors are open.
So
I can put my email address up.
what I'm going to do actually, Gina, is as soon as we're done here, I'm going to send out the recording of this session. So anyone that registered that wasn't able to participate tonight, they could watch the whole thing. But with that email, I'll also include your contact information if you want to include that.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, with that, I'm going to stop the recording, but I want to thank everyone for joining in. This is 2 hours of underwater weirdness, which is a good thing because all the biologists are just so passionate about what they do and they love talking to the people about this. But thank you so much for joining in and asking questions. And like I say every time, share this amongst your friends. If you have family or friends that love the outdoors and nature and all these crazy cool things involved with it, share the word because we're here. We love teaching people, but we just we'll do it as long as you want and whatever topics you want. So.
Yep. We could be here all night.
I'm sure we could.